I'd like to call the meeting to order, the City of Monona Community Media Committee, February 13th, 2024. Will, you obviously have the roll.
I do.
Did we get minutes
Uh, yes,
in the
they
packet?
should be in the packet as well.
Okay,
Yes, they
then do
are.
I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was November 21?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from November 21.
Okay, do I have a second?
A
I'll
sec.
second.
Okay, we got a second. Any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 The minutes are approved. I don't think there's anybody here to make an appearance tonight. Right?
Nope.
We have no ongoing business. Under new business, number 6.1, newsletter survey draft, review and approve.
Yes. So let me get that. I basically just went with what I sent out before and put it together in Constant Contact. And I guess we just need to kind of look at it and go, are these the questions that we want to ask for sure? And then just look it over, I guess, one last time and see if there's anything we're missing or what have you.
I thought it looked pretty good. It's a good topic for discussion, though.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to share my screen so we can see it. Okay, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And I will try to make it bigger here. Okay. So this is essentially what it'll look like. I I don't believe it gave me an option, unfortunately, for like multiple selections. So we may have to add um
Pick one.
pick one or yeah, it's been so long since I did this. We may have to just like add a box down here and say other and then
Mm-hmm.
have them write in other for if they need to if they want to do multiple selections. I guess I'm not sure how to other to handle that. The city website does do a a type of survey too. But this I just felt since we're in constant contact for this month and then next month we'll go to the city website for the new newsletter platform. It just seemed more straight away to do it this way. The website has its own weirdness of making a survey on the with the website software.
Right. So I don't know if this was discussed previously. I can't recall it being discussed previously, but another option might be to do it on SurveyMonkey and then just put the link in the newsletter.
See, that's
And-
what I originally wanted to do, and from what I read on SurveyMonkey, you could only do like 150 responses, and if you wanted to do more, then you got to pay for it. And since we
As in mailing out to 150?
well, like if we put a link in the newsletter that said go to SurveyMonkey and take this survey,
Yeah.
only 150 people of the 1,100 people who are getting the newsletter would be able to take the survey unless we wanted to pay for a subscription to SurveyMonkey to be able to do more people in the survey.
Okay. d- Will, we just got another email from Bill Graff saying he can't get in either.
Okay.
So if you can
Tell him
reach
to
out
go
to,
to the agenda. The
yeah,
agenda will take him in.
yeah. Um, well, if that's the issue, I have a paid subscription plan to SurveyMonkey because I use the SurveyMonkey all the time for my consulting business.
Okay.
And it would be pretty easy for me to put the survey up um, on it, and there aren't any limits in terms of how many people get it. And the only reason why I said that is that I just didn't know in terms of tightening up the newsletter itself and also just in terms of people being able to choose more than one answer, but it may be preferable to this group um, to, only have one answer, the answer that best answers, so to speak.
Oh, okay. So he's here. Sorry, I'm dealing with Bill. I did hear you. Bill should be coming in now.
Yep.
I don't know if you're seeing all my email and everything, or if you're just
Yeah,
seeing.
we are.
Excellent. All right. Well, you can see what I'm doing then.
I mean, for those couple questions, we could just change which best describes you for that concern.
Right.
If you don't
Right.
want to leave it in.
I'm sorry, you can say that again?
Like for the, is okay, what topics are you most interested in receiving? Oh, that one's kind of a bummer to not get more than one.
Oh, what topics are you on? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so um I haven't activated this to actually so Amanda, you mentioned that you weren't able to select more. I didn't I didn't test that. Were you able to test that?
When I previewed it, you could only test one, like
Okay.
pick one radio button.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that would be the big one that you would want to have people have that option.
Will, this is Katie. I'm driving. I'm sorry I don't have a screen on, but what about like a Google form? You can do a pretty easy survey in there and it just dumps into a spreadsheet. Um, and I mean, I
Oh,
don't
that's true too.
think there's a subscription based on that. And then you can have all sorts of answers. And it's not as nice as an actual survey tool, but it's helpful.
No, that's true. I didn't even think of that. And then, right, and then they still give you the, right, all the analytics of who answered what and everything like that.
Yeah. And you can even like in the spreadsheet, you can make graphs and charts and things like that if that's helpful for reporting out. And it should be free. I mean, we're a Google school district, so you'd have access to it through the school district. I'm not sure if the
Right.
city would use that, but I wouldn't think it would be a problem since we have an agreement between the district and the city.
No, that's a good idea too.
And the other thing is that the advantage of going to something like SurveyMonkey or Google would be that, like, for instance, not only what topics are you most interested in receiving, where you could check more than one, but then also, under other, um, you actually, somebody could check other, and there would be a box, where somebody could say what that other is, because
Right.
other doesn't really help
Yes.
us us in terms of building out the newsletter in a direction that people are sharing if they can't share what other is.
No, I mean, actually, Google Forms would actually be pretty easy for me to utilize. I could um, rebuild this in Google Forms probably fairly quickly. It'd be nice to get out this newsletter if we agreed to the content, and then I could have till Wednesday to get that Google form put together.
So then I guess the question for the group right now would be, are these the right questions? And in relation to that, for those of you that might be, in case anybody's less familiar with surveying, I would say that one of the things that when I'm collecting data, qualitative or quantitative data, one of the things that I always ask myself is, is it actionable? Is it something that we intend to be actionable? Which is to say, as an example, if we're asking somebody's identity and we end up with, you know, 60% female and 40% male, or 60/30, and 10, that say non-binary or another gender, does that mean we're going to have a different, what are we going to do with that? Does that mean that we're going to do a different kind of outreach, or we're going to target to groups that aren't represented? Or are we just trying to get a sense of what our current audience is, which is okay too. I'm just tossing that out as something that I know I always have to ask myself when I'm doing.
I feel like that point is really valid, particularly with that question. A lot of the other ones are interesting, like the where do you live? That's been a topic that's come up multiple times. Like, are we sure it's just Monona residents, or is it Monona Grove School District parents that may not live in Monona?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that seems fair. I think age is interesting because we put a lot of content about like children's events or senior center events. So maybe if we found out those where those age groups were not, viewing the newsletter as much, maybe we would not put 5 senior center events in the newsletter. Maybe we put like 2, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Similar with the stories, the topics of the stories, we might make choices based on what people say is of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So maybe the identify question's not needed, but I feel like the other questions are.
So I actually have another question. If we scroll back to um what topics are you most interested in? Um, I Community events doesn't necessarily seem like a topic to me. It seemed, I mean, when I think of community events, I think of things like the community festival or Loudoun Library, or things like, I think of events in a pure sense rather than programs that like the library might do, or programs that the senior center might do. So I'm wondering, do we want that big of a bucket, or do we want to break that down more into something like community special events versus um
maybe, like if you look in the Herald,
Mm-hmm.
what you'll see is you don't see many community events. So I think community events is actually a good topic because that says, okay, what's happening at the library? What's happening at the senior center? What are the dates? But I agree, you might want to add something that is uh, community monthly schedules or something like that. Although you did talk about not putting those in because everybody has their own newsletter.
I mean, you could put a EG after community events to give people some examples of what you mean by community event.
Well, like the special skating at the ice rink
Right.
on Valentine's, things like that. That's what, when I see events, that's what I would look.
Yeah, we could align these more to the sections that we normally have, but then there would be a lot of them. But would it be of interest to know like the senior center events versus or senior center topics versus the Harry Whitehorse Festival, that sort of thing? We did a lot for that this summer. But you don't want too many options.
Right. Or library versus park and rec versus special events like the Harry Whitehorse. Senior
I
center.
wonder if you I wonder if you could
Nancy,
actually separate it between events and programs and like I think of events, I think of special events the same that Nancy's talking about. And then if we get a lot of people who say programs, even though we don't put that in there, maybe there's a button that says like, click here for library programming or senior programming. If people are looking for it, we can at least point them in the right direction, even if it's not going to be in the newsletter.
does anyone here know, Will or Nancy or anybody else on the call, does the Monona website have any single like community events calendar that puts everybody's events all together in one place, that one link? And if we do, then I'm kind of thinking of a way to market this more as just not highlights or a few upcoming events, but community events calendar. And it's a little more specific than saying community events because it tells people, when you hear calendar, you think what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow. And I bring that up thinking about what's competing in my inbox and your inboxes with this email that people get from the city of Monona. And I get a couple of newsletters that are sort of like aggregators of Madison news. And then at the bottom, they've got what's going on in Madison today. And it's a neat little events calendar. And that's the thing that I personally always gravitate to. So I wonder if people looked at something and saw, here's where to click and see what all is happening in Monona today, but only if that already exists in one place. We can't, we don't have the time or the resources to create that and link to it in the newsletter if it doesn't already exist somewhere.
Yeah, I would say that it doesn't, Bill. You can see Will's got the website up, the city's website up, and you can see, there's at the bottom, you see Parks Rec and Pool, Library, VMO, Senior Center. And then you've also got Park and Rec events and Senior Center. But I don't think there's an overall calendar
Okay.
on the city's website, and that's a much larger undertaking, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong, but I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy to talk to Leah about having something like that, but certainly wouldn't apply to this survey
Mm-hmm. Okay.
if we're looking to get it out.
Yes, this is the layout for the website as far as calendars. So we'd also be looking at changing the layout of the website if we even could to display a different calendar or change the look of this. I'm not even sure if we have that ability without going back to the company that built the website and say, can you change this module part of the website? So yes, it would absolutely have to be something we would look into if that's what we wanted to do. The other tricky thing is Parks and Rec definitely has things here, and
Fuller Plung.
they also have their own website within our website.
Right.
Oh, that's neat. You guys, I just want to say real quickly, Nancy, I may have to come out real quickly for just a quick little moment to vote at another meeting. But
Okay.
if by any chance I'm not sitting right here when you vote, I would vote yes. So
Okay.
whatever that's worth.
Thank you, Susan.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, so assuming we can't do anything with the website right now, because that's as Will said, that's definitely a bigger nut to crack. Um, do we want to just break out community events into a we could, like I said, I think we could either put a EG and give some examples that would help people understand that we're saying all of the community events, or we could say community events and give examples of events versus community programming, and then give some examples of like the library, the senior center, in just a few words, so people know the difference between the two. Assuming that it's helpful to us to know which they're referring to.
I think
Or we
that's a
could,
good idea.
hmm?
I think that's a good idea to have just a separate one for community programming.
If we have room for it, a topic could simply be Monona Public Library or Monona Senior Center, and then that would encompass events that were taking place at those venues. And then by inference, community events would be things that were not happening at the library or senior center, but something more like Monona Community Festival, like you said, Nancy.
I'm just going to throw out there that the group of us can't agree on what an event or program or activity is, that we can't expect, the hundreds of people that are looking and reading this to know either what we mean. So I guess I would advocate for separate broad categories so that we can at least get an understanding of what people think we mean when we're talking about it, and they understand what we mean when we're talking about it, but I don't feel super strongly about it.
We could do, oops. I mean, we could do that, and it's another broad.
What do people think?
I like that.
You like that?
Hmm.
Just to lump everything together.
Yeah, that's right.
Works for me if it works for other people. It's up to
Like
you.
how much
Sure.
space we put in for the library and the senior center, I think they should be different. Like that's like a quarter of our newsletter every month. So if you put them separate, I would do community events like the festival, Harry White Horse, skating, and then community programs, like senior center, library.
So if we said,
So we could, I'll just write something and then we can go off this because I'm going to rewrite this in Google anyway. And then, I don't know.
you could just say library, senior center, park and rec, right?
Yeah. That's just my opinion. If others feel differently, happy to go with the other option.
And then community events, would be like, beer garden.
Or I think it would be more like, because the beer gardens tend to be sponsored by somebody. Maybe it would be like Park and Rec, for instance. So it'd
Okay.
be like
Or
community
concerts in the park. No?
Could be fall festival, community festival.
Do this, do. If I did that, and then I'm gonna go ahead, oops. Let's just see what it looks like, see what. Now we'd move those around a little bit to have them be not after other, of course, but if I'm thinking of the newsletter, I like Amanda's idea that we do have sections essentially, and I think Joe was getting to this as well, that our sections are basically library, senior center, economic development, police. So if we're going that route, that makes sense to break it up. But um yes, it's tough because everyone's going to have their thoughts, and how much are we going to be able to manipulate the newsletter based on the feedback, I guess is another thing to consider.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. And in the back of my mind through this whole conversation is whether when whoever is putting together the newsletter has 7 items and 6 spaces, who's going to go to the police chief and say, I'm sorry, but more people want to read about environmental initiatives, so you're bumped. I don't think in real life that's actually how it's going to work. And if we consider the results of this survey as advisory and as guidance in making some of those choices, but not an absolute bright line that this gets cut because it wasn't popular in the survey.
And I don't want to muddy the waters, but I'm thinking back to the last meeting, and if without looking closely at the minutes and listening to the recording, I believe this came about. Katie had mentioned doing a survey to get a better idea of the people that are subscribing to the newsletter so that we can get an idea of perhaps who isn't subscribing and therefore trying to then cater our marketing or our reach to reach other people that are currently not subscribed, other demographics or what have you. I believe that was the original intent if I'm remembering correctly. Not that that has to be the only one or that's what we have to do. I just wanted to bring that about because I think that's a good point too. If we're looking to try to expand the newsletter to get more Mononians involved, this is only going to only going to give us only going to give us information about the people who actually are subscribed, not necessarily people that aren't and are looking for this particular stuff.
Yeah, and not to muddy the waters still further, but one of the things that recently came up, I think it was at the MESBA meeting, that we had was that the school district actually had a survey, and there are a lot of people in Monona who don't necessarily have children in the schools anymore, or never had kids in the schools, but they're still paying, obviously, to support the school district as they should, myself included. But they're from that discussion. One of the things that Mary said, which I think I would concur with, is, there are some things that we could work together on in terms of, especially if it's something like that, where getting, I think, making sure that you're reaching everybody, rather than just the people that have children in the school system right now. And so whether that begs the question of, in the newsletter, do we have local school district updates or something like that? Is that something that we consider? Because I know Mary was talking about potentially using the alert system or basically the city helping the school district get to everybody was the conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm happy to talk with you, Nancy, or everybody here if you want. I'm on the list that is sent out every month of, news requests, and Will and I have talked about it a lot, that anytime that we have something that should go in the newsletter that is relevant for everyone and is timely and is going to make it into the newsletter on time, Will and the newsletter team do put it in, right? There's no question of like, should we put this in or does it get cut?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so I think there's always room for improvement, certainly, but we do try and do our best for anything that's community focused to get it in there. And Will's great about making sure. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay, so is this the question is this topic list the right topic list?
I do have one question.
Mhm.
One of the topics is stories about Monona residents. And as Will said, when we ask these questions, do we have the capacity to deliver on them? If 99% of people say, yeah, we want stories about Monona residents, where are those going to come from? Who's going to write them?
We had a couple that were like, there's like a meet your police officer, I think, that was kind of would fall in this bucket, or there's been some historical stories that I would put in this bucket. I don't know if Will, you had something else in mind, or Anita, if you can remember anything else, but I would think those are relevant to that.
Yeah, they were provided by those departments. Yeah.
But Monona residents implies not city employees, but at least to me, that's how I'm reading it. If you want it to be about city employees, then it should say stories about what city employees do to serve the community or something like that.
Maybe it becomes stories about Monona community members. So it's not specific to residents. It could be business people. It could be staff.
But again, if you hold this out to people and say, is this what you want? Can we deliver that? Who's going to create that content?
I would say out of the list, like local government updates, we'll usually add those at the very end. Sometimes we'll get them in advance, but I feel like that's like construction or elections, that sort of stuff. Community events, we've covered that. Public safety news, we always run that. That's whenever the police have an update. Environmental initiatives, that's sustainability committee. I'm assuming that's Teresa, and she always makes sure she gets something in. Business economic development, that's the like what's new construction. I would say that stories about Monona residents is the kind of, I'm not sure we're doing that consistently.
Yeah, because we don't create the content. We curate it from all the different departments.
Stories about Monona and
Mm.
or community residents or community members, so it could be about Monona, like something historical or something. Um,
Seems like more what the newspaper would do, stories about Monona residents, if they have staff writers.
I mean, it could get taken out too. I don't,
Mhm.
if it's one of those things where we're not sure what to do.
Yeah, to the point of the action item, I could see us taking that out because if everyone checks that, but we only have a few stories a year on it and we're not planning to write anything else, or we don't have someone to write the story, then maybe it comes out.
how's that look?
I mean, here's another thing. We could go in there and say, um,
Human interest stories.
actually, I was hoping I could add, I I did this so long ago. Now I forget kind of how this. So yeah, that's not gonna work.
You could do another.
Oh crap! Cancel. All right. I wanted to like put another box in there that people could actually write something in.
Well, and you can do that with Google or with
Right.
SurveyMonkey. Under other, you would have a box underneath it so people could write in what they want.
Yeah. So we could take this out and then, essentially other would be, you know, please tell us what you want to. I don't know. That's not the right way to say it, but
Right. Yep. And so we're going to take out stories about Monona residents. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so, if we're not planning to write to fulfill content.
Okay.
I would agree. Uh, we could always do that down the road. I could add in some of the employee appreciation posts that I'm putting on Facebook if we wanted to do that once a month and add an employee in there. But yeah, residence is tough because then we are doing some research and everything else.
Okay. I think we get that one.
Well, is there a way in this survey instrument to have people rank like from 1 to 7, which is most and which is least important? Or does this form not do that?
That's a good question. I am going to change it. Yeah, rank order. Uh, it changes everything. I can't see then, but yeah, um, I don't know how that works. But I could, since I'm going to go into Google Forms, I could see um, how Google Forms work, and I could make a ranking thing um, perhaps even this question. But perhaps that would be answered by the way people answered, and we got a bunch of people saying local government and and then community events. Yeah, it wouldn't rank it, but I guess it would still show us the
Right. You kind of have a ranking by virtue of the responses.
yeah.
So,
You,
well,
yeah.
can we scroll down to um satisfaction with the frequency? What are we going to do with that question? I'm going to go back to my original comment, which Bill, you missed, but was, we're looking for actionable data. If somebody said very satisfied or very dissatisfied, do we know first of all, we don't know why they're dissatisfied. Is it because they want it more often or less often? And second, if they're dissatisfied and if we make the assumption that somebody's satisfied or dissatisfied based on the frequency, which is what this question is, does that mean we're going to do a newsletter twice a month? I don't think so.
Another way to get at that, Nancy, is keep the question worded exactly the same way. Rate your satisfaction with the frequency of the newsletter, but the choices would be monthly is not frequent enough, monthly is too frequent, or monthly is just right.
Right, but I guess my point is, are we really thinking about changing the frequency? Because if we're not, I wouldn't ask the question.
Oh, yeah. When we did the survey for my newsletter at UW, that was the scariest question we put on there. Because what if they want it every day? They're
Right.
not going to. But yeah, that's you like on the other one, you've got to be prepared to deliver if you're asking people what they want. And if we can't deliver something, then maybe you're right. Don't ask.
I mean, to me, it just seems like doing it, once a quarter or something. It would either be huge or people wouldn't get information in a timely manner. And I don't think we're prepared to do it more than once a month. Or we want, I think that would place an undue burden not only on those of you that are involved in pulling it together every month, but it would also be a burden on the city staff to be coming up with, and others to be coming up with information all the time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I will say that, I put this survey together and I also did a little AI help with it. So I am totally fine. Not that I want to blow it up, but if there's other questions or thoughts people are having, I'm all for that. Is that we do not have to just stick with these questions and then either just delete them. Whatever people feel is best. And maybe we don't send it out on this newsletter. Maybe that's too soon. Maybe we need to rehash. And not that we have to. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't want people to think we have to live with this because I put it together. But I can also appreciate we don't want to just him and ha either.
What do people think about this question?
I think you're right. We should go.
Yep, get rid of it.
Okay. Oops. All right. Well,
I'm sorry, the audio was cutting out here, and I was unable to hear what Amanda and Adina said.
Content is fine, and we're looking at where the one we wanted to get rid of, Will, is the frequency.
oh yeah, my fault.
Yeah, Bill, we agreed that we thought the question should go.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to waste people's time trying to remember how to figure out how to delete it right now. So we're gonna do that.
Okay.
I can vamp for you while you're doing that because I was just going to say I've got no problem with going ahead tonight with this. We've done some good work on it and I think made some thoughtful tweaks. I do want to raise what's a related question, and it's not against doing a survey, but whatever platform we send the newsletter out on, what kind of analytics do we get from that as far as people engaging with the content in the newsletter? Because then instead of asking people to self-report, what are you interested in? We can see what they're actually engaging with on the newsletter email. Do we have the capability through whatever vehicle we use here?
We do. And I can show you real quick.
And do we ever go back and say, okay, in last month's newsletter, how did that story about the tree program do versus that announcement from the police department? Do we look at those analytics?
I do send those analytics to council for my monthly reports and let them know what stories are getting the most hits.
And do
So
the folks that are putting together next month's newsletter have the benefit of that research and that data to inform their choices about what might go in? Because now we know we can look at who's actually reading and engaging with what content, and we might see, only two people would care about, or 2% of the readers or whatever care about this item on this topic, but 30% care about this. So maybe we should do more of what 30% of people care about. I just hope that having that information, which I would find really valuable as a curator of content and as an editor, that's not being overlooked, or that we realize that that's a resource we could be tapping into to get some of the same kind of guidance that we're trying to get from the survey.
Well, I think what's happened before is that we don't like Anita collects the stories and we don't consistently get stories from every department, and the way the analytics works, it just shows you the links. It doesn't show like by section, and we don't use the same section headers each month. And we did I haven't been seeing this lately, but like the first year or two that I was on this committee, I would do like a yearly kind of roundup of the data, but I had to manually piece together the development section for every month, which was a hot section. Like people were really interested. It was just very manual because of the type of constant contact we have, but we're also moving to a new tool, and I don't know what the analytics will be on that. It was just very manual to like kind of over the year kind of piece together what stories were most important without an app. Like it wasn't very apples to apples, we'll put it that way.
Right. So, Amanda, just to get clear, what you're saying and looking at this particular analytic, what you're saying is if a story doesn't have a link in it, then we wouldn't necessarily know,
Correct. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And then it would be like, you have to manually like dissect, like there's the Madison Metro link here. You need to somehow in a spreadsheet, like put this is a Madison Metro update. And then over the course of like, to see trends, you would need to do something like that, because some links, as you see like 3 or 4 links below, there's this link protect gobbledygook kind of link. You really have to do a lot of dissecting to put it together. It can be done. I did do it. It took quite a bit of time.
Right.
I will say consistently, development is right up at top. And the senior center seems to be closer to the top on most newsletters.
The senior center stuff is up at the top.
Well, it tends to get clicks. Development usually is like the number one pretty much all the time. And it does change month to month depending on what's going on
Sure.
in the city, you know. Um,
Sure.
Obviously during elections there was more during the referendum, that story obviously was up there. So, um, I think it also is newsworthy items that tend to get clicks.
Sure. Well, it seems to me, given what Amanda's just said about have con having to do a lot of labor to get the analytics that are maybe truly meaningful, that perhaps, and knowing that this group wanted to do a survey, I mean, it's perhaps the survey that we've created is, is just fine. I mean, we've just spent, an hour going over it and knowing a little bit more about what people are interested in, who we're talking to is not a bad thing, right?
Nancy, if you want a motion, I would move to approve the survey as we've amended it tonight. Maybe with the understanding that at a future meeting, when we get into switching over from one email provider to another, we can maybe follow up and continue this conversation about analytics, because every platform is going to have a different way of doing it.
Sounds good to me. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Motion carries. Thanks for all that work, Will.
Yes, thanks for everybody's input tonight and previously as well.
Okay. Monona Go subscription review discussion.
Yeah, so again, I think at the last meeting there was a quick mention of, well, we went over the analytics of Monona Go, and it just, right, it doesn't get a whole bunch of love as far as people watching. And so there was talk of how much is it costing and how many people have downloaded the app. So I provided that information here, and you can see that Apple is doing decent with 704 downloads overall, and Android has 164, and Fire TV and Roku not so much. And then I broke down the cost as well. So I guess I just brought this back up for our own knowledge as we move forward, and maybe it's a topic when budget season comes and we look at the analytics again closer to that time perhaps and see where we're at. I'm not proposing we get rid of it or keep it or whatever at this point, but I think it was a good question that I believe Katie asked of, is the usage validating the amount of money that's being spent. We're competing with YouTube, which is tough to compete against. It's the number two browser basically. It's Google, and then it's YouTube where people go and search. So, uh, anyhow, that's why this is on the agenda. We can talk about it, or we can say, great, thanks for showing us. Let's talk about it closer to budget, whatever you guys want to do.
Will, I don't want to be the obsessed with analytics guy tonight, but are there analytics on how many people use the app after they've downloaded it? Because do you want to see how many apps I've got on my phone that I've clicked on maybe once? So
I think that's a good point.
Do they track that? Can we find that out?
Well, all we can see is if they're watching our videos. And when we looked the last meeting, when we looked at the videos, we found that, 5 people are watching this video, 6 people are watching this video, maybe 10 are watching this video. And then you go to YouTube and we're getting 25, 30, 180, videos that have been on there for a number of years are at, multiple, 500. So,
when do the fees that we pay for this come up for renewal?
Right in the beginning of the year. So I just paid for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I guess my thought is I'm going to assess it this year, and if the views continue to be low, then I guess it's something we think about. I hate to scrap it, but it was also something that was kind of an experiment to experiment with and kind of let the community know we're trying to have more touch points for you to be able to view our content, to be involved in Monona. It's certainly, in my opinion, easier to navigate because you're not dealing with YouTube. You go straight to the app, and all it is our videos, and they're in categories. You're not dealing with the YouTube craziness of getting to where you need to go and figuring it out. But people are very familiar with YouTube as well.
Well, and then I think another question would be if we've already paid for this year, do we try to do more advertising, whether that's more PSAs or more, or maybe it's at the bottom of every newsletter. Have you signed up yet? Or, have you downloaded, Monona Go yet? And try to see if we can boost the use of it. How many people have downloaded it and how many people are using it as long as we've paid for it this year, as opposed to just letting it sit and hoping that it increases.
Yes, I agree. It's having a plan of what are we going to do to try to get people to utilize the platform. And I've thought about that. I do have on the digital signage around the city, I do have um, advertisements and QR codes on there so people can download them. It is at the bottom of the newsletter, so we could like periodically put it at the top and say, don't forget to download. I do mention it on the community calendar towards the end to, watch what's going on in Monona, download the app. But there's certainly other things that can be done.
Will, I have a question about the videos and what gets watched. Do you think high school stuff like sporting events and concerts, are they up there? Are city council meetings? What are the big number of views or the top watched videos?
Well, on YouTube, it's the high school events, hands down. They're going to get the most views. And then when you look into it and you look at plan commission meetings or council meetings where there's, specific items that are on there, then those will get higher views. But from an overall consistently, these sporting events and the concerts and things that are happening at the high school, definitely get more views.
Would it be possible maybe to get the QR code on like the football programs or I don't know if basketball games have programs, but QR code in at the gym. I don't know, spitballing.
Yeah. Yeah, I could talk to the athletic director, see if he is open to having a QR code hanging out on the wall or something. We
Oh,
did have it available like pre-game for football games. We haven't been doing that for basketball, but we struggle to get more students involved in basketball than previous years, but also with football. Football, a lot of people like doing that. But those are certainly great options for sure.
another thought perhaps is we get concert programs for orchestra, choral, band concerts, and it seems to me like Carl Davick and the other music educators, they might like to have a chance to let people know, hey, if you want to watch the concert again or let grandma see it, that might, since they're already printing out programs, that's just another thought. The music department at MG might be a point of outreach.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in fact, I thought they were adding it on the bottom of their programs, but I'll have to double check. I haven't looked in a while to talk with them. But yes, absolutely.
Any other ideas that people have in terms of boosting, trying to boost the number and then see where we're at a later date?
I think that's a good plan.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you think of any other ideas, why don't we say, and anybody in the group, if anybody, has any other ideas that they think would be helpful to boost that app, just shoot those ideas to Will, right? And Will, pace yourself as always, right?
Yeah.
But really for us to all kind of keep it top of mind. So whenever you see something, any of us, that's a city communication or some announcement of something, think to ask, okay, who do we talk to get a Monona Go QR code on this or some mention at an event or whatever? This is, we can all kind of keep it in the mix.
Agreed. Agreed.
Joe, can we do QR codes on WVMO?
I think they call that reading on the radio. I hear that's
Right.
bad form.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. Anything else on the Monona Go for tonight? Let's go to Madison Metro marketing update. I asked Will to put this on tonight just because I have immense respect for this group, and my first question to you all is, do you feel like you have seen across our many media channels, heard or seen information about Metro coming on March 3rd? Yes? Okay. It's good to know. So, because Teresa and I have been meeting with Madison Metro and Will and Diane upon occasion and Mark Whitaker, our finance director, who's the staff member assigned to transit, have been meeting with Metro every single week since the beginning of December. And we have a spreadsheet of marketing that we're operating off of, um, uh, across all of our channels. And I just wanted to make sure that, like for instance, I was just at the high school last week, doing Conectados with Shalene, with Jillian Slate, who's a member of the Transit Commission. And I was at MESBA last week talking to business owners. And Will's been taking pictures for social media that we've been putting up on social media. And I just did a PSA yesterday about an information meeting coming up. So it's we're doing everything we can to get the word out, and I just wanted to get a sense of. I wanted to let you know that we're doing everything we can to get the word out. Certainly through the newsletter, through the senior newsletter, through the city's Facebook pages, etc. So I just wanted to make sure that people are seeing it and hearing it. Um, and I'm happy to take any suggestions from folks too, if they have any suggestions for marketing. We had a suggestion for Metro, actually. Lindsay wanted to put musicians on the bus for the first few weeks. But I'm afraid Madison Metro nixed that idea, because in fact the route that we're on that takes us downtown is a really popular route, and they don't want to give up a seat to a musician, and they're afraid that somebody's instrument might get damaged or something. So that's a battle we'll fight for another day. But there has been some discussion about doing some live broadcasts, as well, for VMO, which we haven't made a decision on. We can talk about that, Will and Joe, if that's something of interest. It doesn't all have to happen in the first week either, so but we're really trying to get the word out about the start. Any questions, ideas, thoughts about the metro marketing? The big issue in the community, big switch for the community.
Nancy, I
Alright.
think the messaging has been really good and the graphics have been excellent and the information really focused. The best messaging I saw was down a couple blocks around the corner from my house, and all of a sudden I see a silver pole with no sign on it, and I'm thinking, what's that for? And then I realized that's going to be my bus stop, and I got really excited. It's very cool. What I've talked with some people in kind of a whimsical way about, I don't know how serious it is, but doing something to somehow tie in the phasing out of the Monona Express with the upgrade to Madison Metro and making it feel like, I don't know, almost a little bit of a community celebration or a send off or a appreciation of the people that were involved with Monona Express. Um, I don't know if that complicates the messaging for the Madison bus or not, or just opens too much of a can of worms, but just wanted to throw that out there in case you've heard it anywhere else or there's interest in doing something when we retire the Express. Unfortunately, the last time I saw the Monona Express, it was passing my window on Cops Avenue on the back of a flatbed tow truck.
Uh-oh.
So I don't know if we'll get to the send off or not, but anyway, but as to your question, I think all of the promotion and messaging has been just great.
Good. Thank you.
Especially,
By the
I'm
and by
sorry
the
to,
way, when those
yeah,
polls, first of all, they're going to have signs up soon because we have all
yeah.
the signs. And second, when they put up the bus stop signs, Metro also produced signs to go under the permanent signs to be fastened to the poles with zip ties so they can come off, um, saying, starting March 3rd, because
Hmm.
they need to get the signs up, but they don't want people freezing their butts off at a bus stop thinking the bus is going to show up. So they created temporary signs, and I'm assuming that Public Works is working through those now because we do have all the signs.
Mm.
So, um, okay, let's move to the next item, which is let's be civil. Joe.
Well, it's a project that you and I first talked about last fall, Nancy, and the idea being that we kind of wanted to use VMO as a way to educate citizens about local government and the local school board. And so we started out doing a series of conversations centered around primary elections, uh, and then talking about how people would sign up to run for office, about the basics of being a candidate, and talking a little bit about city council functions. And so that was November, December. And over the last month, we've focused on the school board and the primary election that's coming up next Tuesday. So the first series of conversations were myself and Andy Kitzlar. The second series of conversations were between Sue Carr, who is a VMO volunteer and, of course, wears many hats around town, and Elizabeth Cook, who's the president of the Monona Grove School Board. So between those two topics, we got off to a good start. We've gotten 20 different segments on the air. My hope is that as 2025 unfolds, that we use this let's be civil rubric to bring in people from various city departments to talk about what they do, talk perhaps with citizen members of committees like this one about the role of citizen committees in city government. I think there's just a lot of interesting basic information that we can impart to VMO listeners about what their city government does and doesn't do, what citizens can do to be involved and engaged with their government. So topics of like, how do I file a complaint about this, or how do I make an inquiry about that? So I'm interested in assembling interesting guests, interesting topics, and interesting people to have these conversations, because I don't want to be the only voice on the radio talking about this. I'm hoping that this project can be broader than that. So we'll have a variety of conversations, questioners, and people answering questions as the year goes on. And I'd like to ask members of this committee to please contact me at the radio station with your ideas about what you're curious about. You know, what are some aspects of city government that maybe you don't understand as well, or you think your friends and neighbors would be curious about, so that we can start getting those topics on the air. And just so people know, these segments are generally 90 to 120 seconds long, so they're not big in-depth conversations, but they give us a chance with each segment maybe to talk about one aspect of a job or a department, or a specific question that people might have. So that's kind of what this project is, and I'm excited about it being a way for VMO to kind of fulfill its mission, or one of its primary missions, which is to engage the community and foster a sense of community between our listeners and city government. So that's my Let's Be Civil spiel. Anybody got questions?
I would just add to that, Joe, that the one of the reasons why I raised it with Joe was that not the title. He came up with the title, and I think it's genius. But but part of the reason why I brought it up is that it was, post the referendum. It really became even more obvious, although I think that there was just a lot about city government and how it works and how we budget and what people do and who our staff are, you know, that people don't really know. And it's a small community, so we have the beauty of being able to, I think, to change that, so that people, I mean, there's certain staff members that are out there all the time in the parks or whatever, that people might feel like they know a little bit more, but it was just the whole idea. And then, topics like the difference between an operating budget and a capital budget, or how the budget gets put together, for that matter, that could happen around, budget time. Um, so that was the idea behind it. And
Well,
I thought Joe did a fantastic job of queuing it all up, of course.
well, thank you, Nancy. I mean, I think what's implicit in the title, Let's Be Civil, is not just that we want to learn about functions of city government, but the sense that our discourse has been coarsened in recent times, and that there is this tendency for people to be shouting at each other over a fence, rather than having a conversation with their neighbor. And we want the radio station to be a positive place with respectful dialogue and trying to foster understanding. So certainly the idea of Let's Be Civil has that baked into it. Not only are we learning about what our neighbors in city government do, but we're finding ways to have a respectful discourse about about government itself.
Thoughts, ideas?
Well, please, if folks, that there's somebody who you're curious about in city government or a topic that you think is germane to this idea, please contact me at the radio station. And if there's anyone on this committee or somebody you know who would be a great voice for this, either as an asker of questions or an answerer of questions, please feel free to make suggestions about that as well. I'd appreciate it.
Fantastic.
And I'll say Joe's comment of he doesn't want to be the only one voice on the radio. I think Joe and I talk about this a lot because him and I are on quite a bit with the community calendar and then with the VMO show and things. And it gets overlooked, I think, sometimes that we need so many different voices on the radio. So not only to represent Monona, but perhaps more importantly, so it's not just the same 4 or 5 voices consistently on the radio. That gets old quick, and so it's hard to emphasize the how much we need more community members to come in and voice things, so it's not just the same 2, 3 voices.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, shoot those ideas to Joe. And again, if you're interested in representing, I mean, I know I'd love to see the very citizen committee members, go in and talk about, what it's like to, what committee they're on, what was, they're in, why were they interested in that committee? What is it, what are they, why is it valuable? If they were talking to the neighbors, what would they say about the, the community service that you're doing? So definitely step forward. Okay, any questions? Other comments? Nothing. Guys have gotten quiet. Okay.
We're at 90 minutes, so it's people.
I know. So, do we have anything quickly, since it is 90 minutes, do we have anything in reports, WVMO or committee ideas discussion, anything else that needs to?
So I can say quick, and then Joe, you can go next with whatever you want to add. Last night we met with the Friends of WVMO, and we worked out a memorandum of understanding, which essentially is just going to make it an ease of use, I guess, or easy for everybody, in that the underwriting that Joe is producing and putting on the radio, that those funds will at the end of the year get transferred to the city, 90% of it, and 10% of it the Friends will keep based on the processing fees, if you will. So, and the goal of that was just to make it easy, so it's not like at the end of every single year we're coming to the Friends and saying, okay, that 8,000 we got in underwriting this year, we want to check. It's just kind of an understanding that at the end of each year, that's what's going to happen. So that passed. So I think that's good. And there was some good uh, discussion about just moving forward on trying to do some bigger and better underwriting and sponsorship. And then, of course, the approval of working with the San Damiano Beer Garden on August 14th to be kind of a WVMO 10th anniversary celebration with the band Wheelhouse. Um, so that was with the Friends because they're putting in some money to make that happen as well. So I think those are the 2 big items. Joe, you have anything else?
Well, I mean, that's basically it. The station has been entering into underwriting agreements pretty much concert events. So working with promoters and venues to get out the word about shows. Really, we're spreading the word about events with music that we already play on the station. So it's messaging that's consonant with WVMO's sound and our sensibility. And so that's been stuff that Will and I have been putting together at the station. So the Friends are basically providing a way for our underwriters to support the station, and we in turn are asking the Friends to remand that back to us so that they can help defray our operational costs. Because the truth is that while VMO has a very important volunteer component, it can't run strictly on volunteers, and so having that ability to defray operational costs is important. We are working with a volunteer of the Friends group to try to come up with larger underwriting agreements with local business, and we came to a basic framework, an agreement with that with the Friends last night. Hopefully that will start to bear fruit as the year goes on. But the station is well aware that we live in a time of limited budgets, and we are trying to do our part to help defray our costs by reaching out to our listeners and asking for underwriting support.
Right. Thank you, Joe.
Can I ask a couple of quick clarifying questions?
Mm-hmm.
I know we're running over time, but
Okay.
I was also at the meeting last night, and another one of the members of this committee, Dave B., was on the call as well. Is it correct that the Friends will still have other fundraising activities that they engage in, totally separate from the underwriting and sponsorships that you're doing? So if they want to raise money through an event or something to pay for stickers or to pay for merch, I don't know how all of that works, but there still is a private fundraising role for the Friends group that's not affected by this memorandum of understanding. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And second, if it's you, Joe, and city or station employees that are really doing the work of creating the underwriting and the sponsorships and reaching out to do that, and if the money's going to come back to the station at the end of the year, what is the rationale for the Friends having any role in that process?
Essentially a tax deduction write-off for the person who is writing the check. Because if it went to the city of Monona, they wouldn't be able to have a write-off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then last question is, once that money is transferred to the city at the end of the year, is it transferred specifically to WVMO, or does it go to the city's general fund and is just revenue that could be allocated anywhere by the council when the next budget is done?
No, it would go to the general fund of the community media department. So the fund we have that's, you know, um, supposed to be at about 20% of the budget. So it would go into that. At least this is how I envision it and how I would present it to the council. If we were to use it, is that we would say, we're putting this money in the general fund and now we have this bucket. And in this bucket, I propose in this operational year 2020, whatever, that I would like to use set amount for this operational purpose.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
Thank you.
it doesn't, Bill, it doesn't get sucked up to any other department or to the city as a whole. It definitely goes only to community media.
Okay. Just one other quick observation, having attended this meeting last night, is that going forward, I think more communication between the Friends and the Community Media Committee and the Community Media Department, and VMO in particular, as represented by Will and Joe, would be a good thing. Because it seems like there is a lot of lack of understanding of the role of each one of these units in the whole process. And spending some time together and having some conversations about that, I think could get everybody rowing in the same direction. Just
Okay.
food for thought.
Yeah. Okay. Great feedback. Thank you. Anything else? And assuming there's nothing else, I'd be delighted to take a motion to adjourn. I thank you all for your service again tonight. Sorry the meeting ran long, and I'd be happy to take a motion.
I'll motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Have
Thank
a good
you.
evening. Stay warm. Thanks, Will.
Yes, thank you.